Yes. Welcome to the Irish NFL show, brought to you in partnership with QuinBet. It's very exciting new music. You heard it there. We've got an all-new season coming up. We've done our roster cuts. We've slimmed it down to the five you see here tonight. It's Brian O'Leary, Shane Brennan, Kieran Boyle, and Noel Dowling, and myself, Conor Brophy, with you for the season ahead, through thick and through thin. Tonight is the night we're going to nail our colours to the mast firmly. We're going division by division. We're going conference by conference. We're going to pick our division winners, and we're going to lay down our wildcard picks as well. So we'll each have a playoff bracket etched in stone that we will be referring back to through the season, both for bragging and for slagging rights, depending on how it goes as the weeks progress. At time of recording, we're just a week away from regular season kickoff. We have the Aer Lingus College Football Classic, sadly in the rearview mirror, but I guess we're already looking forward to Farmageddon next year when Kansas State take on Iowa State at the Aviva. We are looking forward, though, now to the NFL curtain raiser, which is next Thursday night at time that we're recording. As I say, that's an AFC clash between the Ravens and the Chiefs, a repeat of the AFC Conference Championship game, which finished 17-10 to the Chiefs, as many of you will know. And we're going to start with the AFC tonight for our picks, both for division winners and for wildcards. We'll do our Super Bowl picks next week, so you can hang on to that one and hold us to that as the season progresses as well. So we're not going to do that tonight. We'll keep you in suspense on that one. But just to be clear, we're going to break down each division as we go. We'll each declare our division winners, and then we'll recap with our wildcard picks at the end. We've already submitted them. Brian has them in the envelope. He's got PwC on standby there to ensure the security of all of the different picks. We've also managed, or I managed at least, I'm going to call my own foul here, to pick did I have 9 wild cards or 8? I think I had one too many somewhere along the way.
You gave me 4, Conor. Yeah, I thought you were getting some special treatments because year 2 in the franchise, and someone allowed you to have 4 picks. You were getting greedy.
I was overruled following the owners' meeting. Right, let's kick off with the AFC West, and it is to you that we go, Brian. Chiefs, of course, emerged on top last year and went all the way, so that's why we're starting there in honour of the Super Bowl champions, the reigning Super Bowl champions, going for that historic three-peat. Do you think that they will get there, and does this start with them winning the AFC West in your view?
I'm not entirely sure whether they'll get there. I think there's a lot of competition ahead of us in the AFC. I feel sorry for the other teams in this division. I had a fan, not necessarily a Broncos fan, maybe people would assume it's a Broncos fan, but another fan of the AFC West say this is getting quite boring, and how can you all enjoy and be enticed by watching Patrick Mahomes every year? But he's arguably the best quarterback in the league, and as long as he's around and he's fully functioning and playing really well, and when Andy Reid is the head coach, it's hard to argue. I put it back on this fan that, it's about time someone in the division start really giving them a proper challenge. I think it's 8 or 9 years in a row they've won the division, and here they go again. And it was probably one of the easier starts this evening, Conor. I think I'd be surprised if anyone's going to go against the Chiefs. It looks like it's a foregone conclusion. This is kind of reminds me of the Patriots back in the day. People who used to back the Patriots to win the Super Bowl, essentially, they knew that the East was there for them. They needed the home field advantage, and then they run it to the Super Bowl. And it feels like that's really where the Chiefs will be come January. But I'm sure there'll be other teams that are thinking they can take them this time.
I think we're going to end up running through the AFC West in about 30 seconds the way we're going. You took the words out of my mouth, Brian, because I was thinking Patriots, and Shane was trying to stifle the smile and the grin there. And it's interesting the way the AFC West is falling now, because it is quite similar to the way the Patriots were in their heyday of dominance in the AFC East. And that not only were they brilliant, and not only did they have Tom Brady, they just happened to be in a division where everybody else sucked. And that didn't hurt either, as you were saying, because they got a run and start on their Super Bowl bid every year. Shane, do you see it the same way that Brian sees it?
Yeah, I understand Brian's point that it's about time that somebody in the AFC West starts trying to put the pressure on. But in the same way that Spurs put the pressure on every year, that doesn't mean they're actually going to topple the real giants on top. And I think, you're really looking at the Chargers. How well can they do to really make a push? The Raiders are still in kind of rebuild mode. We're not quite sure we can expect enough consistency from them. And the Broncos, this year is all about trying to rebuild their quarterback situation after quite a disastrous run with Russell Wilson, to be fair. And Sean Payton is a man to maybe bind that group together in the future, but I don't think this season is a time when the Chiefs, who are still riding exceptionally high and winning 2 Super Bowls in a year, have proved that when the offense lets them down, 2 things will step in place to make sure they're strong. The defense, which did absolutely excellently last year, and Patrick Mahomes, who was by far the best player in the league. If anybody's going to stop the Chiefs from winning the AFC title, it's going to be whoever they play against in the playoffs, probably somebody from the AFC North. I don't think the Chargers have enough in them to properly press on to really get to the Chiefs level. They'll be close. there will be a couple of times we'll be seeing this year and thinking, I don't know, maybe the Chargers, maybe the year where Harbaugh has come in and really drill into these guys to make sure that they get enough out of themselves. Not to evoke memories of the AFC East of old too much, but I just think this is it's going to be another cakewalk for the Chiefs here.
Yeah, I'll take up that team, and maybe I'll take it from the perspective of what needs to happen for the Chiefs not to win the division. So what would need to happen elsewhere? Well, either Bo needs to know football and needs to know pretty quickly and be the CJ Stroud of this year, and the Broncos suddenly catch fire. That's a long shot, I got to say. Yeah, I'm very interested to see how the Jim Harbaugh experiment works out with the Chargers. I could go either way on that one, as I was saying when we were doing our tiered list. I can see the argument for him invigorating and bringing that iron brand of discipline and getting the thing going. I'm not so sure he's necessarily the man for the job now, and I kind of wonder if the NFL hasn't passed him by based on the way he constructed his championship winning roster at Michigan, and whether that template transfers neatly to the NFL and to the AFC West. I remain to be convinced. The one thing that I think might potentially be a little bit interesting is Vegas. I mean, one of the things I took away from receiver from the NFL series, which obviously followed Devontae Adams among the other group of receivers that it followed, including George Kittle, Justin Jefferson, and Deebo Samuel, was just a transformation. And we saw this a little bit from the outside, and there was plenty of talk about it at the time when Antonio Pierce actually got that gig. Obviously, he came in as interim coach during the period in which receiver was recording. But there does seem to be a new vibe there. Things do seem to be a little bit more upbeat, a lot more upbeat than they were when Josh McDaniels was at the helm. Sometimes that can make a difference. Obviously, it's Gardner Minshew, and we'll see whether Gardner could do. I guess if you like, if you're looking for Bo Nix to be this year's CJ Stroud, if you're a Denver fan, you're looking for Gardner Minshew to be this year's Baker Mayfield in Vegas if they're going to get rolling. That's one thing I'm kind of interested to watch. Do I think that that's going to get rolling to such a degree that it's going to dethrone the Chiefs? I do not think so. Kieran and Noel, can we get your picks, please, before we move on to our next division?
Yeah, I mean this is a no-brainer. I mean, you saw Patrick Mahomes is in preseason, or mid-season form already. You saw that flick pass to Kelsey a couple of weeks back. I mean, that the division has not really kept up with them. I don't think the Raiders. I think there's going to be a down year for the Raiders. I don't put much stock into their chances this year. And the Chargers. The only thing I can tell you with the Chargers is they're going to run the hell out of the ball. Other than that, I don't know how they're going to react to Harbaugh. But it's, I think it's, I don't want to say it's a foregone conclusion, unless something wild happens, but I can see the Chiefs winning this by 2 games, maybe even 3.
Chargers going to party like it's 1999. I'm not sure the NFL is ready for the run first and run second option. Noel, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not going to shock you at all, guys. I mean, I have to go lockstep with the rest of you. There's too many questions about the other teams in this division for me, and the Chiefs are just the cream of the NFL. They're obviously the champions, and everyone else just looks like they're in some sort of rebuild or trying to figure out exactly what they've got or who they are. And it would be a monumental shift of power in that division if someone else was able to overtake the Chiefs. So it's not going to happen for me in the foreseeable anyway. Certainly not this season.
As we move to the AFC North, Noel, conveniently, as we've just been talking largely about the Chiefs and how I think across the board we all expect them to win the AFC West. Their opponents in the season opener on Thursday night are obviously the Baltimore Ravens, who were kings in the AFC North last year. Noel, do you see them repeating?
I do, but obviously this is such an incredibly tough division to kind of pick. For me, like say, the worst team in the division would be the Steelers, but then we know a Mike Tomlin, team never goes less than a winning record in a season. So you don't know what they could do. They could easily sneak into a wild card spot. You then have the Bengals, obviously. Joe Burrow there. When you've got that kind of a quarterback and Jamar Chase, things just happen. You have that ability. They maybe have a few questions on defense, but you think that offense can really cause trouble for teams. And then for me, the Browns are kind of the opposite. I think that Browns defense is really, really strong. But for me, that all comes down to Deshaun Watson, and we know how patchy he's been. I think he's played 12 games in the last 2 or 3 seasons there. So for me, I just think the Ravens, they have their own question marks. I'll be interested to see this offensive line. It's been all changed there. They obviously lose their defensive coordinator in Mike McDonald. So we'll see if that can have any sort of impact. But really, the Ravens are a class outfit. John Harbaugh has done an excellent job there. You've got Lamar Jackson. They bring in Derrick Henry. If he's even half the guy player he's been over the last number of years, he'll be a massive upgrade. So for me, I just think the Ravens will probably be strong enough to top what I think will be a really competitive and tough division.
Yeah, I don't think anybody expects this to be anything other than the same sort of keenly contested division that it was last year, Kieran. I think there's an argument that this is the best coached set of teams in the NFL, the best set of coaches. You got Tomlin in there, you got Harbaugh in there, as Noel's just been saying. You got Zach Taylor in there, and you got Kevin Stefanski, the reigning coach of the year, of course. Those two teams, the Bengals and the Browns, finished with winning records last year, despite not having their starting quarterback for most of the season. Stefanski had 5 different starters at one point and still managed to make the playoffs with the Browns. Very difficult to predict.
It is. I mean, the AFC North, it's almost like the throwback to the old 50s and 60s, blood, mud, and tears. It envisions up images of Cleveland in the snow in December, or Pittsburgh with mud flying everywhere. I actually have the Bengals winning this by a hair. I think this is the year of Joe Burrow. I think the only guy that can put it up to Mahomes, in not just in the AFC but in football in general, is going to be Joe Burrow. He's come out with the bleach blonde hair. He's bulked up. He's definitely concerned about those issues he's had with the ankle and with other parts of his body in years past. I think he wants to get rid of all that and protect himself as much as possible, especially because we all know there's going to be issues with the O-line with the Bengals. But I have them just a hair past the Ravens. I just think everywhere on the field, it's just everywhere. I mean, it's just talent and power everywhere. I think they've got enough to just sneak past.
Shane, shake it up for us. Will the title be heading anywhere other than Owings Mills, or do you have the Ravens as well? Please, throw in something different. Stir the pot.
To be honest with you, this is one of the ones I've kind of been sitting on the fence on for a bit, because every time I look at the Bengals, I think, oh, they have Joe Burrow. He's coming back. This is their time to really push. And then I stop and think about, okay, who's he throwing the ball to? Fair enough. They still have Jamar Chase. They still have T. Higgins, but who else do they have kind of in that in that groove to really make the plays? If you have a WR1, WR2, fair enough. But in order to get past a division with the Steelers, with the Browns, with the Ravens, you need to have somebody else to throw to. And then I look at the Ravens and I think, hang on a second, they're after losing a defensive coordinator and a defensive line coach to become the head coach of the Seahawks and the defensive coordinator of the Dolphins. And as much as Lamar can run the ball and pass the ball and played an MVP caliber season last year, I'm just not quite sure that they can produce enough consistent performances in the tail end of the season in comparison to Cincinnati. We have seen consistently that Cincinnati, with Joe Burrow fit, build into a season. Doesn't really matter what their results are in the first 2, 3, 4 weeks. They build and build and build. They get a run going, and they know when to peak at the time of the year when they need to peak. And that's the reason why maybe by one game and one game only, the Bengals will get ahead of the Ravens. But it'll be an incredibly interesting division. The Steelers being gold TV from now on in, unless Russell Wilson shocks everybody and just does an excellent job, which I'm not expecting for an entire year.
I'm going to go Ravens. Brian, you're there to wrap it up. What do you think?
No one's selecting the Browns. No, it comes as a bit of a surprise. No, all things equal, I'm going to side with the Bengals this year. I think as well as the Ravens played last year, I think the question mark still remains of how competitive the Bengals would have been with Joe Burrow. They seem to be just getting their mojo back. Difficult start. I think this year it was a difficult start. And with regard to the Chiefs in week 2, it's also a big game in terms of if they could get that one over the line in terms of seeding potentially further down the line. So I'm going to go Bengals to out the Ravens as the NFC North champions this year.
Cool. Okay, we move to the AFC South. I'm going to kick it off here. The division, of course, topped by the Texans last year with that breakout season from CJ Stroud that we mentioned in passing a little bit earlier on. D'Amico Ryans, the rookie head coach, a rookie offensive coordinator. This time last year, we were saying they had an awful lot to do. We were talking about how maybe it wasn't the greatest landing spot for a promising rookie quarterback. How wrong we and a lot of other people were, and they turned out to be probably the story of the NFL last year in so many ways, to the extent where it's what everybody thinks of when they think of drafting a rookie quarterback and with the rookie head coach, and they've now set the bar for what's actually possible in year one. I'm going to keep it conservative here and say that they're probably going to top the division again. I'm just not seeing enough elsewhere to see that crown taken. Jags, I don't know. To me, I remain to be convinced that they're not stuck in a bit of a rut. I was very disappointed with them last year. They fell off the wagon in a big way, and were cruising at one point. It looked like they were going to win the division, and they never quite got their mojo back. The Colts, I'm kind of interested to watch, and I might come back to them later on without spoiling my wildcard picks, because if they get Richardson back for a full season, if Jonathan Taylor's at full force, I think they still need to improve significantly defensively, and that's probably going to be the key to them progressing. All that and Anthony Richardson learning to run like an NFL quarterback and not like a college quarterback. You can't do what Haynes King did against Florida State University at the Aviva last week in the NFL. Anthony Richardson proved that conclusively last season. Don't lower the shoulder, because the defender's going to lower the boom, and they're bigger boys than they are in college. That's the pass to the hospital. That's the only thing that can be said there. It's Texans for me, but Brian, I'll shift it across to you.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to shift it too far. I mean, we're talking about a shift. This division has shifted quite quickly in the space of 12 months. This time last year, we were discussing a Jags team that have come off a playoff loss against the Chiefs. Things looked, you touched on there, looked like there was great expectations. You had a Titans team that were slightly in flux with Vrabel, and it kind of played out that way. But I don't think anyone was foreseeing the impact of it, of DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud. We did touch on last year, we felt the Texans could improve because the nature of some of the off-season moves they made, experienced players that would understand the nature of going in and trying to rebuild the team up, but probably not to the expectation of what happened. And they've only kind of doubled down on that in the off-season. As I said on earlier shows, I'm not entirely still convinced Mixon and Diggs will ultimately be the ones that bring them to where they want to be within like the AFC in terms of a championship game. But the division, I think they still have enough. I think they've built a nice team enough that they can take care of the others. The others are in flux. I think there's a surprise element to this division yet again this year, and I know we'll come to that shortly, but for me, it is the Texans as well. I think the Texans will win the division. Yep.
Kieran, what say you?
Yeah, I'm in agreement too. Like Brian said, it's shifted. That kind of window and that focus in the division has definitely shifted over to Houston. We've talked about in previous pods, we've talked about the offense and the power of the offense of the Texans, and something to really remember. And you're looking at a whole team now, not something that they just put together with little bits and pieces with the draft, but you're looking at a complete team now who I would not be surprised. And I don't want to show my hands too soon, but they're going to go deep in the playoffs. When you talk about the offense, the defense of the Texans is something that people aren't really focusing on. And you got Derek Stingley, Fatu Cassie came from the Jaguars, Will Anderson, and then that trade for, or that free agent pickup with Daniil Hunter. I think all the pieces are in place for the Texans. All the mojo and all the flow is going their way. The only thing they got to worry about is keeping Stroud in the field, because that wide receiver room, like I've said before, is arguably the best in the league. And putting Mixon in there is definitely going to take a lot of heat off of Stroud. Keep him on the field, keep him fresh, switch him out every now and again for the run game. But I can't see anything else but Houston winning.
Cool beans. All right, Noel, what do you say?
Yeah, everything. I'm going to copy Kieran there. Everything Kieran said. I really like this Texans team. I think it's being built up the right way. I think they've done a good job at putting pieces around this young rookie quarterback who is clearly really, really talented, to give him a chance to continue that development. And I think they can go a long way in the playoffs. And the Jags, maybe there's some question marks. Can they get to the earlier form from last season and not kind of have that meltdown? Who knows? We'll see. They do have talent there, but still think the Texans are probably a little bit too strong. So, yeah, I think they'll take the division.
And before we go, East, Shane, finally, your division topper in the South.
Yeah, it's good to hear that everybody here is sky high in Space City. But as a Kildare man, I'm more drawn to the horseshoe. I think the Colts are going to win this division. And all the points about the Texans that have been made today are 100% perfectly valid. There are a few people who are as big a fan of CJ Stroud as I am. I just think that the pressure, all the expectation he done the Texans, all the primetime games, all the attention. You have to remember last year, the Texans were 10-7, the Colts and the Jags were 9-8. The Texans and the Colts played against each other in the last week, and that match was very close to being Colts being a 10-win team. And that's without their fresh quarterback. They have Jonathan Taylor coming in, they have Pittman Jr. on the wing, and they have Anthony Richardson coming back at quarterback. They're playing a lot of 6 o'clock games, the same as the Texans were last year. In the same way the Texans managed to, I guess, surprise people, I think the Colts will be able to surprise people this year.
All right, we move to the AFC East, and Kieran, the home of your favorite New York Jets, who I'm sure you're going to pick to go the whole way this year.
In a shock, I've actually picked. No, I haven't. No, I'm going to go with the Dolphins this year. I'm going to have the Dolphins top the division. I mean, we saw last year, and we've seen in previous years, they're kind of building towards that. They're kind of the regular season champions. That's that offense that, we don't need to talk about it. We all know about Tyreek, and we all know about Tua and Jalen Waddle. And I think the only question mark in my mind is that defense. The O-line has got some questions too. But the biggest question is, can they get enough of a record? Can they stay out of the cold weather games? Because they haven't won a playoff game since December 23rd, 2000, when they beat the Colts in overtime. That is an eternity ago. But can they stay in Miami? Can they stay in warm weather? Can they luck out of going to somewhere like Kansas City or even Baltimore in January, where it's going to be anywhere from 0 to 20? So that's the real question. But I think Tua got paid. Tyreek is just Tyreek is Tyreek. And having Devon Achane back, who missed a big chunk of last year, is going to be a big help for him too. I think that I think they're going to have just a bit too much for the Bills. I can see them winning that by probably a game and a half. And I'm not even. You all know my stance on the Jets. I'm not even going to entertain that one. And but yeah, I got the Dolphins. I can see a 12-5 record for the Dolphins. I really can.
Shane, your Patriots teased with the idea that Drake May might actually start, but it looks like that one's been laid to rest by Gerard Mayo, who said Jacoby Brissett is going to be the man, at least for the start of the season, and they hope he can maintain the sort of form that keeps Drake May sitting for at least a year. Is that going to be enough for them to do any damage? I suspect that you're not necessarily going to pick your beloved Pats for the title here.
No, I'm not going to pick the Patriots this year. And just a quick note on that situation. Fingers crossed, maybe Drake May's first game as a Patriot will be in London. That will be quite exciting, because a lot of people got very excited, in my view, overly excited about Drake May's performance in the preseason. But that's a topic for another day. In terms of this division, when I woke up on Monday, I thought, I think the Jets can win this. In fairness, I didn't sleep very well Sunday night. I woke up on Tuesday and I thought, well, the Bills have done it every year. Why can't they do it this year? But when I woke up on Wednesday morning, and this is the version I'm sticking with this year, I think the Dolphins will win the division this year for three simple reasons, I guess. The Jets, their schedule is awful, especially in the first half of the year. There's enough to slow them down, even if Aaron Rodgers is serviceable. The Bills have lost too much talent, I think, to maintain the pace that they have in the last couple of seasons. I know dumping Ken Dorsey and putting in the new OC gave them a nice juice of life last year, and they basically just let Josh Allen do whatever they wanted, and it kind of worked. To a new season, I'm not 100% convinced that the Bills can hit. They will be playoff contenders. I don't think they will win the division. And I just think that with Tua getting the money, with Tua and Mike McDaniel working well enough, so well that Tua will go on to a podcast and have a whinge about Brian Flores, and all of the offensive talent was being put in there. That's still in there. Tyreek Hill, Waddle Beckham Jr. will be available later on to the season. Raheem Mostert is still around. Jalen Waddle is still around. They can put up a lot of scores. The tail end of the season for them it does involve a lot of road games in cold weather cities, but I think they'll build up enough steam early on to top this division.
Like yourself, Shane, I had slightly sleepless nights this week, and I was thinking back to this time last year when I had that kind of weird feeling hearing the words, I think the Lions are going to win the NFC North, coming out of my mouth, because you think this goes against everything that we've seen for as long as we've been football fans, to tip a team like this to do something like that. But you know what? Turned out the Lions were good enough. And the preamble here is to me saying that I think the Jets are going to top this division. Just whatever you think about, and I've bored people on the podcast many times in the past talking about Aaron Rodgers and my dislike for the man, but you don't need vintage Aaron Rodgers. You don't need MVP Rodgers. I just think this roster is so good. I think this defense is so good. I think they have enough weapons that they're in position to win this division, provided he stays upright, and that's not necessarily a stone cold guarantee either. We can talk about that with other quarterbacks as well, and we've touched on Joe Burrow in the AFC North as another one who's risky, but also another one who, if fit, absolutely has what it takes to lead his team to the division. I think Rodgers is the same here. We only need I think 70% Aaron Rodgers is more than good enough to take the Jets to this title and to the playoffs. I would think maybe the Bills in the runner-up spot, but I think it's going to be something of a down year for the Bills. I kind of agree with a certain amount of what you guys have been saying about the Dolphins, but you know, much though I like so much of what Mike McDaniel does, and I love the creativity in the running game, and I love the way they can mix it up on offense. And you know, I am a bit of a Tua believer. Finally, he's kind of won me around. You know, I think he's good enough, but I just watching what happened to them last season towards the tail end, those last couple of games, particularly the way they got manhandled by the Bills, and then just that limp playoff exit. It's very hard to get behind that in terms of them shedding their image of the glass jaw that they have. It's Jets on top of this division for me. Noel, what do you think?
See, I'm going with you on that one. Sorry, Kieran. For me, look, I like this Jets defense. I think that defense is going to be really, really strong, and it is predicated on Aaron Rodgers having, you know, a specific type of season. Now they have kind of updated that or upgraded the offensive line a bit to give him a bit of help. Obviously, you have Garrett Wilson there. They have a good running back in Breece Hall. I think if this offense can click and Aaron Rodgers can get going, I think they probably just shade the Dolphins. I was between the two teams, but I look at those last 6 games for the Dolphins, and that is a tough run. And I think the Dolphins could start really, really strong, but those last 6 games, they could maybe, you know, they could lose 3 or 4 of them, and they could maybe just kind of scrape in as a wild card. I think the Jets just have a good team, as I say, if Aaron Rodgers clicks.
Are we missing anyone? Brian, sorry, I nearly forgot to get your pick for the division. How rude of me.
Yeah, this is the one I wasn't supposed to say too much about, so I won't. In a New York minute, everything can change. Well, it did last year on the opening drive, but I don't foresee that this season. I am also going with the Jets. I think they built a team last year for Aaron Rodgers to come in, essentially step in and bring them to the playoffs. It didn't materialize. I think it does this year. I do think they'll win the division, but I think they'll come unstuck very quickly in the playoffs, and that will be the bigger conversation. Aaron Rodgers doesn't do it again in the postseason as opposed to the regular season. It's the Jets for me as well.
All right, that's our 4 AFC division picks complete now. We can recap on some of the main points there. And for those of you watching us live on YouTube, we'll be flashing up the banners as well, so you can see visually who's picking whom. But while we're getting the banners up on screen, just to welcome back everyone into the Irish NFL show and to the community, which is growing all the time. And you look, again, we're doing the show for you guys, and it's great to have the sort of support that we get, and brilliant to see people and familiar faces and new faces popping up here in the chat. Rory Fitzgerald, a loyal supporter, saying welcome back, lads. Only 3 screens short of a red zone vibe, because again, for those of you watching this on YouTube, some of you will be listening back on the podcast, so this won't apply. But we have the 5 boxes now. We're only a couple of boxes short of Scott Hansen's fever dream, when you have all 8 screens going at the same time. Rory also saying, I'm sure Kieran's delighted to see Louis Rees-Zammit snapped up by the Jags. That could be exciting from a special teams point of view, Kieran. We'll see. I'm sure you can get down there again to talk to LRZ as you manage to catch a word with them when the Chiefs were in town during preseason. Hopefully from his perspective, he'll be back. I think slightly rough that he got discarded by the Chiefs there. Everything seemed to be going well. They certainly seem to be giving him plenty of pop. So it was disappointed for him to see him get cut, but good to see him back in the game, at least tentatively so, with the Jags. Right, so Kieran's divisional winners. He has the Dolphins taking the East, the Bengals as kings in the AFC North, the Texans emerging triumphant in the South, and the Chiefs repeating on their way to a three-peat in the AFC West. Brian has the Jets taking the East. He has the Bengals on top in the North. He has the Texans in the South, and again, the Chiefs in the West. I have the Jets in the East, slightly nervously so. I have the Ravens in the North, the Texans in the South, and like everyone else, I have the Chiefs in the West. Noel has the Jets in the East, the Ravens in the North, the Texans in the South, and the Chiefs like me. So that's a snap for the two of us across the board in the AFC. Shane has the Dolphins in the East like Kieran. He has the Bengals in the North. The Colts taking the South. I think you're in splendid isolation there, Shane, in having the Colts in the South and the Chiefs in the West. Right, before we move on to the NFC, it does remain for us, of course, to throw our wildcard picks into the ring. I know I'm usually happy to kind of play a cagey and bring up the rear, but for once I'll volunteer mine up front. So for wildcard picks in the AFC, I have the Bengals, the Bills, and the Colts in the wildcard spots.
There you go, Connor. Yeah, even spoiling your NFC wildcards, but unfortunately,
put a hand over one side of the screen if you're watching it on YouTube, so that this surprise isn't spoiled for you. Kieran, who have you got in the wildcard spots in the AFC?
Well, I've gone for the Bills from the East. I think, despite losing a couple of prize assets like Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs, I think this is going to be a year that Josh Allen is really going to push everything and squeeze every little drop out of what that team has. Keon Coleman, I think, is going to have a big year. And I think that defense is still going to be a force to be reckoned with, notwithstanding offensive pieces like Dalton Knox and James Cook running the ball. I also have the Jaguars just falling behind the Texans. I think they're going to, I spent a good amount of time, as I'm sure everyone knows, at practice with the Jags this summer. The defense put in a huge shift and definitely shaded it from the offense. I just think that the division itself, I think it's going to be back and forth with the Texans up until December, but I think the Texans are going to break free in that kind of week 13 area. The Jags are going to stick with it. I can see them getting a 10-7 record and just limping over the line. And then I have the Ravens, not a huge surprise in the AFC North, but I think they're going to be pipped by the Bengals when all is said and done. Ravens, smash mouth football, just dirt and mud flying, like I said earlier. But with Derrick Henry out there, I mean, we all remember what happened in the playoffs when they suddenly forgot to throw the ball or to run the ball and decided to throw the ball all over the place in the winter. And I think Derrick Henry is going to be a huge asset to them, and that's going to be a real game changer in the playoffs.
Brian, who you got for your wildcard picks?
Well, I've gone with the Ravens. Like as optimistic as I am for the Bengals to rebound and win the division, I still think the Ravens essentially are going to be one of the teams leading light going into the playoffs, whether they're divisional winners or wild card. I have them in a wild card. I think the Dolphins, I'm picking the Jets, but I'm not entirely I'm not going with 100% conviction. I think the Dolphins are in for a good season again. But unfortunately for the Dolphins, and it's to Kieran's point earlier, unless they're galvanizing themselves in a home game come January, it's just not going to be good enough for them, and they'll find their way out of the playoffs very quickly because they'll go on the road as a wildcard team. And this is probably the fourth shock of the night. I'm sure there was other one, or maybe it's not, because Shane has gone with the Colts to win the South, but I'm going back into the South. But I have the Tennessee Titans making the playoffs. I really like what they've done in the off season. I think a lot of other people, it's starting to gather pace in terms of other people starting to suggest this team are a dark horse. I've been saying it for months that they've done a great job, both offensively, defensively. The new coach reminds me of a coach that will come in with little expectations, i.e. last year in the division, such as the Colts and a new head coach, and the Texans. And I have the Titans ousting everybody and getting to the playoffs with nobody expects.
All right, Brian's little Bitcoin Titans craze is starting to gather momentum. Shane, your wildcard picks, please.
Yeah, I've quite simply gone for the teams I think will be the second best teams in the three best divisions, which that discounts the AFC West. I'm sorry, fans of the Raiders, Chargers, and Broncos. So I have picked the Ravens, the Bills, and the Texans all to make the playoffs. I think the Ravens, are exceptionally strong. It'll be a tough race for them to win the division, and they will probably be the fifth seed, I think. The Texans, as was explained by everybody else earlier, are a very good team with very high expectations. I think they will have more than the Jaguars over the course of the season, which means that they will put them in a better place to get the wildcard spots. So the biggest question to me is the Bills. And the Bills have more than the Jets. And I am saying that knowing full well that I've never had to share a division with Aaron Rodgers, unlike yourself, Connor, and yourself, Noel, who picked the Jets to win that division. I can understand your point of view in those selections. But I just think that for me, it's between the Bills and the Jaguars to get that final wildcard spot. I think the Bills will probably just get a couple of more wins throughout the season to lock in that final spot.
Noel, you are the one who gets to complete the bingo card before we move to the NFC. The three remaining wildcard spots for you.
Me, I'm going to go with the Bengals first, because I think in that AFC North, it's going to be nip and tuck between them and the Ravens. And I think they're going to be a strong team. Obviously, you have Joe Burrow there. I think they'll be able to win enough games to get into the wild card spot. I then have the Dolphins coming in, as I was kind of alluding to earlier. I think they're going to start really well. I think they will challenge the Jets for the division, similar to Brian. I'm not 100% solid on it, but I'm just kind of thinking that's the way it'll go. But I think they'll just have a tough run in for those last 6 games where it could derail them in terms of winning the division, but they'll have done enough to get into the wild card spot. And finally, I'm going to go with the Bills. And I was back and forth on this one because there has been so much change there. But look, when you look at Josh Allen at quarterback, I think his wide receivers are adequate. I think a quarterback like him can get that little bit more out of them. And I think they'll be able to just do enough to sneak in there at the end.